Now to our panel for some political analysis. Dan Balz is the chief correspondent for the Washington Post. We'd like to welcome Salena Zito to the broadcast. She's a national political reporter for the Washington Examiner and the author of The Great Revolt, Inside the Populist Coalition Reshaping American Politics. Jeffrey Goldberg's the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, and we'd also like to welcome Seung Kim to this broadcast. She's a reporter for the Washington Post who covers the White House from Capitol Hill. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Let's start with you then. You heard Bob Gates say that Gina Haspel shouldn't be disqualified for any past relationship with the torture program that the U.S. undertook or enhanced interrogation techniques. Does she have the votes to get confirmed?
I think right now things are looking very good for Gina Haspel. Over the weekend, we saw another red state Democrat, Joe Donnelly from Indiana, say he would support her. So looking at the numbers right now, I think the one question mark we have about a potential Republican defection is perhaps Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona, who told us on Capitol Hill over the last week that he's very thinking deliberatively about what Senator McCain said about Haspel's nomination last week. But aside from that, you have at least two Democrats who are supporting her. So her prospects on Capitol Hill look very good right now.
And that comment from John McCain basically saying there shouldn't be any kind of question that discounts the morality of torture here, that any connection is too much to vote yes.
Exactly. And I think what's interesting is you see the absence of Senator McCain felt in so many ways on Capitol Hill. But since he's the Senate Armed Services Committee chairman, he actually would have been able to question Gina Haspel at her hearing as what we call an ex officio member of the committee. So while his statement was very strong, it would have been interesting to see how Ms. Haspel would have fared under questioning from Senator McCain.
Jeff, I want to ask you, we heard from the new Secretary of State at the start of the program, Mike Pompeo. Did it surprise you when he said he doesn't know whether he'll be involved with these talks with Kim Jong-un?
Yes, but it's surprising and unsurprising because this is a spontaneous administration. This is an improvisational administration. We are entering a period of maximum risk, maximum opportunity as well, both in North Korea and Iran. But you intensify the risk when you don't even tell us who is going to be negotiating with the North Koreans. The idea that Donald Trump alone in a room with the North Korean dictator is it's a fraught idea because you don't know what he's going to do, and we don't have a sense of how far he wants to go. So it would be interesting and useful to have the Secretary of State, who actually knows the North Korean leadership, to be involved in that. And it was a little bit surprising that he said that, to be honest.
He might not want to get ahead of his boss, but he certainly has the most developed relationship.
I personally would bring the Secretary of State with me, but that's just me.
When you negotiate with
whenever I negotiate with the North Koreans, I'm always bringing I'll bring Dan Balz, actually. Yeah, I'm bringing Dan Balz.
You're better off bringing a Secretary of State.
All right.
Dan and Salena, I want to get to you both because talking about the president and his behavior and what makes him uniquely him. You've studied a lot about that, including the people who really stand by their votes for him. And you had a piece this week looking at the heart of this country and the people still standing by President Trump. Do you believe here that going into November, that coalition that helped elect him will re-elect a Republican majority?
I'm not confident of that at this point for two reasons. One is I think there has been some erosion in the intensity of support among some of the people who backed him in 2016. And it's not that they have broken with him, but they are nervous about him, and particularly about conduct and behavior, much more than specific policies. So I think that's one aspect of it. The other is, as President Obama showed, it is very difficult for somebody who gets elected president to transfer that coalition that backed that person to other candidates who don't have the same kind of connection with voters. Candidates have to develop that connection themselves, and in a midterm election like this, the Democrats have an advantage. It's the first midterm after a president gets elected. That's always better for the out party. So for all of those reasons, I'm not confident that the president can deliver his coalition in November.
But you said in your piece, the people didn't change, the Democrats did. That's what one person you interviewed told you.
Well, that's right. I ended up talking more to Republicans and people who had supported Trump. But in talking to some of the Democrats in the Midwest, I think there's a feeling that the National Democratic Party doesn't understand the Midwest in the same way that a lot of the Trump voters felt that they didn't understand the Midwest. And their view is the Democrats have to figure out a way to be able to talk to the center of the country while continuing to hold the coasts. And if they can do that, then they will be genuinely competitive in 2020.
And Salena, that's a question you're asking in your book. I mean, is that even possible?
Well, and you know, one of the things about this coalition is that Donald Trump wasn't the cause of it. He was the result of it. So this coalition, I believe, is willing to continue to break things even outside the ballot box. I'm unsure what's going to happen in the midterms, but I do understand that it is still pretty strong and it's pretty intense. And they still believe that both political parties, not just the Democrats, but the Republicans as well, aren't listening to what they have to say. And I find that fascinating that this movement is going on, but we're still not hearing it. And so that's
not hearing it. You're saying on Capitol Hill, not hearing it.
Not hearing it in the way it's depicted when typically when there's news reports and they talk about, you know, well, the Trump voter is this and or that, and this is what they want. Case in point, look at the Republicans in West Virginia. They were convinced that Don Blankenship had a chance. Well, I have been to West Virginia. It's in my backyard. I live in Pittsburgh. Don Blankenship had zero chance, absolutely none. But both the Republican establishment and a lot of the news media thought this was something that was going to happen. So they still don't understand what is causing this coalition to stay together, but also to have their voice be heard in the ballot box.
We want to talk about this more on the other side of this break. So we will be back in a moment with more from our